Side Hustle Show 253, Your Escape Plan, How to Make Early Retirement a Reality. What's up? Nick Loper here. Welcome to the Side Hustle Show, because financial freedom might be closer than you think. I'm excited to welcome a husband and wife duo to the show this week who figured a way out of the system. This is my friend Kim Anderson from thriftylittlemom.com describing their situation a few years ago, and maybe this will sound familiar.
We moved out of the city, started trying to find a house in the suburbs and kind of do the normal thing. And my commute was still in the city, and it's Atlanta. So it was like a 2-hour in, 2-hour out commute situation, just sitting in the car with like nothing to show for it. It really started weighing on us really heavily because the house was a wreck and like I couldn't keep up with anything. And I was so tired when I got home, like it just didn't feel like I was really living. And I distinctly remember him looking at me one day and kind of in jest saying, I think you should just quit your job and be a stay-at-home wife. And I was like, why would I do that? I have a 4-year college degree. Like, I'm going to take the nonprofit world by storm. Like, there's no reason for me to quit my job. Like, that's stupid.
This is the paradox, right? It didn't feel like she was really living, but at the same time, quitting would be stupid. Have you ever been in that position? I'm pretty sure we all have, and it's not a comfortable place. For Kim, stupid eventually won out. She quit her job, and you know what? The world didn't come crashing down. Together, she and her husband, Cressel, who you're going to meet in a moment, paid off $93,000 in debt in less than 2 years. They did it with a combination of conscious spending, side hustles, and a clear goal of what they wanted to accomplish. That debt-free life, that financially free life, was hugely motivating, and it turned out to be more realistic and faster to obtain than either of them thought possible. Today, Kim and Cressel are parents of 3, and they've got the time freedom to spend with their growing family and also to spend time working on projects that they care about. For example, Kim has written a new book that's out this month called Live, Save, Spend, Repeat: The Life You Want with the Money You Have. Stay tuned to this episode to hear how they got it done and get the gears turning on how you can do the same. Notes and links for this one are at sidehustlenation.com/Kim. Before we dive in, let me take a moment to thank today's sponsor, FreshBooks.com. I remember my first freelance writing assignment getting approved, and the editor was like, okay, send me the invoice to this email address. And I must have given her the deer in the headlights look, because she quickly made the comment, oh, look, 90% of my authors use FreshBooks for invoicing. It's super easy to set up. It's affordable. You're going to pay lower fees. So, of course, I took her advice, I set up my account, and I've been a customer ever since. As a Side Hustle Show listener, you can try FreshBooks free for 30 days when you join at freshbooks.com/sidehustle. That's freshbooks.com/sidehustle to start your 30-day free trial today. This edition of the Side Hustle Show is also brought to you by HelloFresh. We're talking about time freedom, right? HelloFresh is a meal delivery service, but beyond the delicious and healthy meals delivered right to your door with free shipping, by the way, what they're really selling is time. And that's what's drawn me to HelloFresh. I don't have to spend time or mental energy on meal planning or grocery shopping. It just shows up, and I know it's going to be good and good for me. Visit HelloFresh.com and use the promo code SIDEHUSTLE30 to save $30 off your first week of deliveries when you subscribe. That's $30 worth of free food at HelloFresh.com with promo code SIDEHUSTLE30. I'll be back with my top takeaways from this chat with Kim and Cressel Anderson after the interview. We begin the conversation with Cressel on the potentially stressful prospect of becoming the sole source of income for the house. Ready? Let's do it.
So I don't think it was a question so much of the financial feasibility. We certainly would have sufficient income for the lifestyle we maintained. It was more a question of the social expectations, which, like Kim said, you've got a degree. It's not like you have kids at home to occupy your time. Why not be out there making money and kind of doing the career thing when you've not really got an obvious alternative that makes sense, in our kind of societal lens for what success looks like? I could see that it would be a much higher quality of life, with her able to kind of do her thing versus spending it going back and forth to town. I didn't really feel like it was that burdensome to be the sole breadwinner.
But I think that's because we really understood what was going in and what was coming out. Like, we had a really firm grasp on what it took for us to live, and it was enough. And it's not like, I don't think we ever felt totally like, oh, like this is a no-brainer. That's why we had to do the budget. Like we had to write down and see how much money we had.
I asked Kim and Cressel about that monthly budget or their monthly run rate, to put it in startup terms. They estimated that at this stage in their life, they were spending around $2,000 a month. And that's between their mortgage, utilities, insurance, groceries, and other kind of mandatory expenses. If they had any student debt at that time, they didn't mention it. And they said that both of their cars were paid off. But there was some money drama through no fault of their own, really, that became a turning point for Kim.
We were using credit cards. We were paying them off every month, so it wasn't like we were using them to sustain life or anything. We just liked the, cash back and all the perks or whatever. And I remember that I was looking at the credit card statement one day and I realized there were like 2 or 3 things on there that I know that we didn't buy, because it was from some business that we wouldn't normally buy anything from, because we're on one income. So it's rare that we buy anything out of the norm, like grocery, gas, whatever. So I hop on the phone with a credit card company. I'm on there for hours and hours. And this happened probably 3 or 4 times. And probably by the 3rd time it happened, I remember being on the phone with the customer service worker and then being like, well, ma'am, you've sent a keyboard to some spot in California. And I'm like, why would I do that? Like, that's so stupid. Like, why? And I was fighting for this money and I was so mad. And I told myself, like, man, I'm fighting for all this. Like, this is my money and I'm having to fight for it. But I remember being on the phone with a customer service worker and something snapped, man. Something snapped in my head. And I remember saying to them, I know that you're just a customer service worker, so I don't want you to take this personally. And I really hope that your company is recording this call for quality assurance because I am done. Like, I will never sit on the phone with you again for hours fighting for my money. I'm not going to do it. And I was like, you have turned this woman into a cash only lady. And then I pretty much just hung up the phone. And I remember sitting there thinking to myself, like, there has to be some other way to live my life than wasting hours of my valuable time trying to get money back. And the truth is, what I didn't realize at that point was that money wasn't mine. Like, that I was borrowing that from them and that was their money. You know what I mean? And that's why I owed it to them. And something just snapped in my head. And I remember that afternoon, I went to the library and I got all these books about like paying off debt and all this stuff. And when he got home, man, from work that night, I was ready. I was like, I am ready to cut up the credit cards. Like, I am ready to go cash only. I don't want to do this ever again. And that was the minute when things changed because we realized that really the only debt standing in our way, the only money we still owed anybody was our mortgage. And so for me and him, like, we looked at what we had and we're like, well, the only thing we need to get rid of to get this monkey off our back is to pay off the mortgage. And so that was really where suddenly all my craft endeavors or all my entrepreneurial pursuits or whatever suddenly changed because now it was about, here's the goal, $93,000 is what we owed on our mortgage. And, looking at that goal and saying, how do we annihilate that as quickly as humanly possible?
How do we annihilate that as quickly as humanly possible? I love it. Now, depending on where you live, a $93,000 mortgage might sound like fantasy land. And I'll admit that was my gut reaction too. Where I live, a starter house might have a mortgage 6 times that size or more. But here's the thing. You've got a choice of where you live. And at some point, you've got to ask yourself, is it worth it? Am I 6 times happier here than I would be in Georgia or someplace else that's more affordable? We all know that housing costs can vary wildly from place to place. And when you're taking a hard look at your financial freedom budget, like Kim and Cressel, I think it's something you've got to consider. In any case, 93 grand was their reality. Yours might be higher, yours might be lower, but the math is the same. If it's higher, just understand that might cost you a few more years of hustling to knock it out. That's going to be the trade-off. But 93 grand was the goal, a clear target in sight and an attainable one too. So Cressel sets up this amortization table in Excel so they can track their progress monthly. And it becomes this game to chip away at it dollar by dollar by dollar. I asked Kim about some of her side hustles. What's she doing to make money now that she's not working a 9 to 5?
I distinctly remember I came up with the idea to make sock monkeys, which was like, I know that sounds ridiculous, but hey, like I sold out of those suckers at the craft fair, like completely sold out. Like I was sitting there twiddling my thumbs halfway through the day. So I felt good about that.
How much does a sock monkey sell for?
Oh, I think I sold them for like $12 or $15 and it cost me like $1 to make them or something like that.
That's a nice margin. Okay.
Of course, it took me hours and hours and hours to make them. So then I switched over to this idea of thrifting because I had all these friends who were in this really interesting subculture of mommy consignment, like kids consignment sales. And they had been introducing me to this idea that, like, basically you can go to these big sales they have in the fall and in the spring, and you can sell your crap, and they give you 70% of what you sell it for. And these moms are all like willing to pay, way more than they would pay at like a garage sale or whatever for these things. So I, not having any kids, was like, I'm going to play around with this. So I would go to thrift stores and find like all the electronic toys that were popular at these kids' consignment sales. And I would clean them up, put new batteries in them, and I'd sell them for like $10 or $15 more than what I was paying for them at these sales. And all I had to do was basically clean them up, price them, and throw them in the sale.
Okay.
So every bit of extra money I could make, I was throwing at that. I sold stuff on Etsy. We sold stuff from around our house. I did a lot of like consignment of stuff, like anything that I could do. And then the other thing I had control over was groceries and pretty much our personal spending, because he didn't really spend a lot of money. So then I started going cash only with groceries. So I only have this much money for groceries. And my goal every month was to have cash left over in my envelope. And as soon as that end of the month came around and I had cash in that envelope, I'd go straight to the bank and put it straight on the principal of the house.
Okay.
And I got really excited about that. And I think month after month, we would kind of check in on the amortization table and we would see those numbers dropping and dropping and dropping.
It really made it kind of like a game, because I mean, I can distinctly remember like logging into the online interface to see what the principal was and kind of how far we had to go to be able to pay off the mortgage. And I would update the spreadsheet, and it was cool because the whatever spreadsheet I downloaded, just kind of did a Google search and downloaded an amortization table. You could kind of see the little graph, historical, here's how you're tracking, and versus what the typical payoff curve looks like on an amortization table, especially on a 30-year horizon. It was just dropping like a rock. So every bit of money that we could kind of throw at this thing, from either, saving on expenses or making a little bit of extra money here or there, it was great because you could kind of get that feedback on a monthly basis that, hey, we're actually making headway on this goal that we've set for ourselves.
Okay. I mean, that's really rewarding to see. Like, hey, we're making a meaningful impact, one sock monkey at a time here.
Yeah, exactly.
Was there anything else going on the side hustle front? I love this thrifting idea, like find what's hot at these different consignment sales and then see where you can find that inventory.
Yeah, I remember I would go, I love me some Target. So I would go to Target really strategically at the end of Halloween, because they mark their costumes down 90%.
Okay.
Just to get them off the store, because they're not going to store them like other stores would. And so I would buy all these costumes for like $1 or 50 cents. And then at the next consignment sale, I'd sell them for like $8, $15, like whatever, because they're brand new. So I could mark them at a significant price because people thought that I paid full price for them.
Yeah.
Anywhere that I could get anybody to pay me for the skills or, talents, even Cressel. Cressel had a few side hustles, even with his regular job.
Oh, yeah? What were you doing?
I would kind of look for opportunities to do field work. So being engineering, we would go out to different sites and do work. And if you go on those trips, you can either take a personal vehicle or rent a car. A lot of folks choose to rent a car, but my car was paid off. It had well over 100,000 miles and fairly low maintenance. I do all the maintenance myself, so I kind of know what that looks like. That car has paid for itself probably like 3 or 4 times over. You get the expense reimbursement for mileage that you put on your vehicle, and pretty much it's just cash in the bank for us.
Okay, because they're paying you the 50 cents a mile or whatever it is, and you're saying it's not costing me 50 cents to operate this right now.
Exactly. And I guess one other thing that I did was I did work kind of media contracting like at our church. So that was a good opportunity for a little bit of extra income.
What's media contracting?
Yeah, like working at the bookstore at church, that type of thing.
Oh, okay.
I feel like I may have also done like some sound, audio, working lights, that type of thing in the back.
All right. And that was paid, not volunteer?
We went to a megachurch, so they had like media teams all over the place. There's media teams for the main area, media teams for the kids area, media teams for the youth area. Like they had tons of contracted staff.
Okay. I knew there's another mega church like right by us, so maybe that's a side hustle for me.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you estimate you're bringing in on the side during this time, during kind of like this gamified payoff sprint?
I don't even remember because I just remember I was just like clawing my way through that as much as I could.
Well, you ended up doing it in 2 years.
Right. We did it in under 2. And there were a lot of things like I don't think that people always kind of think outside the box too. When you're trying to free up your life and give yourself flexibility, just beyond even the side hustles, being willing to take money that you get that's sort of Easter egg in life and throwing it at that. So like tax returns, those would be pretty big amounts of money that we were able to just kind of throw at it. If we had family that would give us monetary gifts or something, we would throw that at it. And I think that was a big part of, every time we were willing to not spend our Easter egg income, I guess is what you call it, on like new TVs or new trips. Like we just kind of put our head down for 2 years and just went after it as hard as we could.
Was that hard to do? To say, hey, I've got this tax return money, I've got this gift money, we got to go on vacation, get a new car, we ought to do something other than kind of like this intangible thing of just like, oh, let's give money to the bank.
Yeah, it was really hard for me because pretty much it was like everybody around me started getting everything I ever wanted.
Yeah.
Like my best friend got the car that I always wanted, and we would go to like hang out with friends because they'd invite us to like Christmas parties or whatever. And you go in their house and they've got this like huge, awesome, amazing kitchen with all these fancy appliances and all the latest tech. And you know what I mean? Like everybody around you is really enjoying a lot of the stuff in life, that you might want. But at the end of the day, you're just making trades,
You're just making trades, which I think is a really wise thing for Kim to say. And remember, she's not even 30 by the time they pay off this house. So I asked Kim what that felt like the day they made that final deposit and owned the home free and clear.
Well, I think it's funny because people always ask me, how did it feel that moment that you walked through the front door? And I remember not feeling any different. Like we walked back through the front door and I thought I would feel a little bit different, But the truth is that it didn't really hit us until we sat down to do budget. Because up until this point, like we had been doing budget religiously, like every single month and probably twice a month. Like every time he got paid, we sat down and did budget. And I think the moment was when we went into that budget for that month and he hit the delete on the mortgage line. That was when it hit us.
You're like, it's gone, it's done.
Suddenly in that void, in that spot at the bottom that's money left over was this just chunk of money.
And I think it was even bigger than what you might think, because if our mortgage was $500 mortgage, well, that's nice to have at the end of the month. But when I feel like we were probably putting maybe like $1,500. We could probably back it out from the 2-year horizon, but I feel like $1,500 plus a month on average kind of towards the mortgage. So when that kind of hits the bottom line at the end of the month as extra disposable income, that feels like quite a raise essentially.
And that was it. No big party, no lavish luxury vacation. Kim and Cressel said they continued their saving ways, stocking an emergency fund with 6 months of living expenses and contributing to their retirement plans, which was something they'd put on hold during this paydown sprint. But the same question came up that comes up whenever you reach a new goal. Now what?
We started asking ourselves, like, what do we want to do now? And we have been together since we were 17. So when we were 17, I bought him a flight lesson for his birthday. And he had always wanted to get his pilot's license. And so basically at that point, we just said, okay, let's cash roll a pilot's license. That was the next thing that we did. And as life has gone on, like we just keep saying like, okay, what do we want to do now? What do we want to do now?
One of the answers to the what do we want to do now question was start a family. And another one of the answers was start a blog. So within a year or two of each other, Kim and Cressel welcomed their first baby to the world. And Kim also started blogging at thriftylittlemom.com. The full story of how she's grown and monetized that site is one that we've got to save for another day. But it's an example of a project you can tackle when you've got the time and energy and content to put into it without necessarily having to worry about the money side of things right away.
Okay, so Thrifty Little Mom started one night in 2013 when I was like ugly crying in the shower because we had a 1-year-old kid and I was like, what am I doing? Like, what's going to happen in 18 years when this kid grows up and, moves out of the house? Like, oh, because at that point I didn't have the side hustles, and those particular side hustles like making sock monkeys and stuff. Like it wasn't that feasible to do anymore because crafting's hard when you have a kid, and I'm a new parent, first time parent. So there's all that comes with that. Like you just feel like you don't even know what you're doing. But there was something missing. there was some component of my life that was missing. And so I just went to go to bed that night. And I remember the thought, start a blog, popped in my head. I woke up the next day and I was reading like everything I could get my hands on how to start a blog. And I just did it. Like I just went for it. And I know he didn't get it because I still remember him coming in the office at night and being like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm doing a blog. And he's like, why are you doing a blog? You know, like I don't really get it. And I'm like, well, here's the truth. The truth is I read a book by Ruth Sukup called How to Blog for Profit Without Selling Your Soul. And in chapter 2, she said that her aerospace engineer husband quit his job because she made enough money to help him quit. And so I looked him in the eye and I said, I'm going to make enough money so you can quit your engineering job. And that was the driving force behind everything I did. You know, before the driving force behind everything I did was to pay off the mortgage. And then when I got the blog, the driving force behind every dollar I pursued with that blog was to get to the point where he would not have to work the engineering job anymore if that's not what he wanted to do.
And Cressel, what's your reaction at this point?
I thought it was more sock monkeys, to be honest with you. But, she kept with it. And I think I honestly had to eat a lot of crow because Kim's degree is a communications degree. I've got an engineering degree. And I think it's not uncommon for engineers to kind of view their degree as kind of a more technical. So this is more like a real job, real degree, whatever. And whether or not that was something overt or that I ever said, it was kind of in the back of my mind. And she built that blog from the ground up. She put in a lot of time that maybe early on I thought, this is just some other kind of fun thing that Kim's going to do.
He was thinking it was a squirrel. You can say it.
A squirrel. But I think the first month that she made more than I did in the month, I thought, oh boy, kind of good and bad. Now, I guess bad in the sense that, wow, this kind of challenges my prejudice about her degree and kind of the value of the training that she'd received. I certainly think my wife is so inspirational to me. And especially after she built the blog, I just am very thankful that we met when we were 17. I'm thankful that we've got to build our lives together. And I'm really impressed with her as a business partner. I enjoy benefiting from her coaching. I think she helps me grow. She challenges me. And I think the biggest thing is challenging my perspective on what it takes to be successful in a career. And it doesn't look like what I thought when I was in graduate school. It's very different now. And I'm glad that I've kind of come down this road. And I'm glad that she's kind of helped me evolve in my thinking over the years.
So all of a sudden, not really all of a sudden, over the course of several years, I should say, of walking an intentional path toward financial independence, which in the grand scheme of things, not that long a time, there's this possibility, there's this conversation that, wait a minute, Cressel, you might not have to go to work either if you don't want to. That's an empowered place to be in.
You know, at the end of the day, when you don't have any debt, and you start kind of looking at the horizon ahead and you say, what do I want out of life? And that's kind of what we started asking ourselves was what do we long-term want out of our lives? And how do we start moving our money in that direction so that we can make that a reality?
And how did you answer that question?
I don't know. I can't even remember now. Cressel, do you remember when we just decided that it was like that you were going to leave? Like when did...
Well, come on. This is like the big picture. Like what's the meaning of life for you guys? Like that's like a really hard question to answer.
Yeah, I think it probably coincided with snowpocalypse in Atlanta, where all the roads were like gridlocked. And I think I had like a 5.5 hour commute that day. And I ended up having to park at a school and walk like 3 miles in the snow uphill kind of thing to get home. But we liked living in the city, especially in college and kind of younger professionals. I think the commute, this kind of congestion, the density in the city we had moved past that phase. And so I think snowpocalypse probably was one of the starting points where we said, what do we want out of life? And I think, flexibility in terms of where we make a living was something that we wanted to kind of facilitate for ourselves and also family. I feel like our son was pretty young, probably an infant, and having the idea that we want him to grow up close to family. I grew up near family and I really value kind of having grandparents in the loop. And so I wanted him to have that opportunity.
Okay, so you're still living kind of in the Atlanta suburbs at this point. I'm looking up snowpocalypse because I remember this was a big deal on the news. This was like winter of kind of 2014, yeah?
Yeah, it was like straight up Walking Dead. Like when you would go down the interstate, like it looked like a straight up scene out of Walking Dead. Like all the cars abandoned, like it was so bad. But I think that was the key, is the commute almost every time is what broke us, right? Because the commute is you sitting in a car going somewhere. And I know it's really awesome when people have jobs where you can like telework and stuff. So that creates some kind of life flexibility. But for us, it was more than that. We were saying we don't want our lives to be confined by a location. We want to be location independent. And we have set our lives up in such a way that might actually be possible. We owned our home, so we didn't have a mortgage payment. So pretty much, when we were trying to make the decision about him quitting, we said to ourselves, what do we have to lose, right? And I think that was one of the parts where we realized, like, we really could do this. And the worst case scenario would be that he would have to go back to engineering. Like, that's the worst outcome of the experiment for us.
Yeah, and at this point, so you have very low expenses, so you have very low monthly cost. And on top of that, you've got income from the blog, and you have kind of this confidence and built up in a bunch of random side hustles you've done over the years on both of your parts.
Yeah.
And then it's like looking at that, well, okay, so what really happened? Like we have a very small monthly nut that we have to be able to crack. And is it worth sitting in traffic all the time?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. I mean, I feel like also during my commute, I listen to probably a fair amount of NPR, where you kind of hear about when you're adding income to the picture, how does that affect your happiness? If you increase your income, and you have a very low income, increasing your income a little bit, it really does a significant amount for your happiness. But when you're making tons of money and you add that same amount, it doesn't move the bar up that much more in terms of happiness. And I think that's where we kind of found ourselves. We're happy, but what are the things that really make us happiest in life? And I think that's kind of the question that we found ourselves trying to resolve. And I kind of had to ask myself, do some soul searching.
And it wasn't like it was an easy thing. I mean, we had, when we were really heavily considering this, we had twins. Like we had twins on the way. So that's a whole nother thing, right? Because it goes back to that other feeling that we had earlier in our lives, the expectations of people. Like nobody's going to understand why on earth would you quit this great solid income that you're getting from an engineering job with benefits and all this stuff as soon as you have 2 additions to your family at one time. Like that doesn't make sense. And we realize it doesn't make sense, but we also realize that we only get one chance at this, right? Like we only get one shot. And what are we going to do with this one life we have to live? Are we going to sit in a car and do a commute that we hate every single day of our lives and waste hours of our time? Is he going to get home from work late, be too tired to play with the babies or be with the babies or be with the son? You know what I mean? Like there's all these trades that you're making. And the question is, are you in a position to pivot? Are you willing to take that risk? And we were.
Yeah, well, you've set yourself up financially to be able to make that move and preach on. I mean,
Right.
people are listening in their commute right now and hopefully getting some inspiration from this.
Yep.
So, Cressel, was it tough? I mean, you got a master's degree. You're, 8 or 10 years deep into this career. Like you've got some inertia and some momentum behind you to say, that's tough to do. And I get the impression that you kind of like the engineering work too. And so was that tough to walk away from?
Yes, it really was, and it really is. I don't want to say like on a daily basis, but I regularly think about what it is that I'm doing and trying to get the maximum return from this decision. It was a considerable investment to spend 8 years of my life kind of climbing the ladder, so to speak, developing my engineering experience, getting professional licensure, being involved and gaining technical expertise. And to essentially put that on the shelf and do something else, I want to make sure that that something else is maximizing our happiness and kind of making the biggest impact that I can. And that, might not be apparent to everybody because they might not have the same metric for what that success looks like. But when I get to pick my son up from the bus stop and help him with his homework and kind of work through the things I hope that will help him find his success in life, that's where I really think I do love this. Like this isn't the traditional career path. This isn't what society tells me I should be doing, but it's a ton of fun. And beyond that, I feel like I don't know what 10 years from now holds. I love engineering. I like exercising that part of my brain, but I also like doing it kind of on my pet projects, projects that don't have hard deadlines, that don't have necessarily constraints imposed by anyone, kind of but my own vision. That's certainly a very free way to kind of operate.
What were your coworkers like when you're like, hey guys, I'm out?
I would say 40% of them are like, kind of, you look into their eyes and you think, they understand, like they empathize with me. And I think if they were in the same position, the same scenario, they would do the exact same thing. I'd say the other 40% are in line with society's perspective on what career success should look like. And I think they politely nod on your way out and kind of acknowledge that, you're in control of your life and you can make stupid decisions if you want. And then I would say the other 20% maybe is a little bit indifferent and sees it as an opening on the ladder, kind of more room, more elbow room, I guess.
Yeah. Did you guys move at this point too to get closer to family?
We were in our house for probably 6 months, and the moving thing was something that was always on our radar, but again, it was one of those things where it was like we kind of kept putting it off because we're like, well, now it's not a good time. Now it's not a good time. Now it's not a good time. And I think something kind of snapped at the beginning of the summer and we're like, seize the day. So over Memorial Day weekend, we were like, let's put our house up for sale. Like there's not a better time than now to just, get rid of this. 2, it's a good market. We can sell the house for more than we bought it for, that whole thing.
One of the big things for timing though, I left my job in January and Kim's book, she was like in the throes of writing her book. And so that really kind of incentivized the departure at the beginning of the year so that I could be home kind of with the kids, supporting her at the house, supporting the blog, and giving her the additional bandwidth to be able to finish off the manuscript, kind of get it in queue for publication, and also just kind of fix up the house, get it ready to sell. I think at some point in the spring, we decided, well, let's kind of hang out a little while longer. Really, I think that was more us or me maybe pushing off a painful thing. It's painful to move. I don't enjoy it. I imagine most people find it as a little bit of a chore. But so I think we were pushing it off. And then over Memorial Day, we were kind of up in the mountains, just relaxing and kind of enjoying the holiday. And I just took a walk with Kim, and I'm like, well, why are we putting this off? Why not just go ahead and pull the trigger? And I think we're glad we did, because we're essentially a year ahead of where we would have been. And we've got a finite number of years to kind of capitalize on what it is that gives us the maximum sense of accomplishment or happiness in life. And so I'm glad we did it.
So Kim and Cressel sold the house they'd worked so hard to pay off, and they moved to North Carolina, where they bought a piece of property for just $20,000, which just about has me packing my bags. It's got a little dilapidated house on it, which Kim described as being in pretty rough shape. So they're not sure whether or not yet that's going to be a fixer-upper project or kind of a complete tear down and rebuild, although you can follow along with that on Cressel's YouTube channel and website makersize.com. It's like exercise, but maker size. And they're not in any rush because it turns out Kim's folks live right across the street. In fact, when we were recording, she joked they'd gone full millennial and are now crashing in mom and dad's basement while they work on getting their own property livable. But with the twins rounding out their family of 5, there's one wild card expense I was curious about, and that's health insurance.
Yeah, that was my biggest concern because we have a 6-year-old and twins that were like new babies. So we did a lot of research. We have a lot of friends in the FinCon community. A lot of those people are self-employed, on their own, and kind of asking around and doing a lot of research and asking people, what their experience has been with various things. And so I think at the end, after all our research, we settled on a Liberty Health Share, like a health share group. Basically, they're not allowed to call themselves health insurance, but it's like a big pool of money. So you have tons and tons of people who pay a particular amount every month. I think ours is like $500 a month for our family, which was like $1,000 a month less than we could get on the exchanges. So I think a lot of people would be like, I don't know if I would do that or not. The deductible for our family was like $1,500. And it's crazy because my husband and I have never, ever, ever been to the hospital, like either one of us, unless it was like, when I had my kids. So it was crazy to me. Like when we first got this insurance, or this, not insurance, but we first got in the health share, we had to take one of our babies to the emergency room because they thought she had meningitis. And I remember being totally freaked out, and I went in and like presented the card and everything, and they were like, okay, whatever, we'll run it. And we're like, good, that's what we have, And I think the hospital bill for us was like $3,000. And so I think we ended up we paid the $1,500 out of pocket, and they paid for the rest.
Wow.
And that's a done deal. Like, that's over with. And that was my biggest concern. Like, I didn't see a whole lot of people online talking about their kids and how that had worked out and that sort of thing. But we've been very happy with it. We haven't experienced any problems with it, and we've been on it since January. I have other friends who are using it, and they've been in the hospital and not had any problems getting their medical bills paid. So for us, so far, it's been worth it.
So far, so good. Well, Kim, Cressel, thank you guys so much for joining me. LiveSaveSpendRepeat.com is where you can find Kim's new book, or of course, Live, Save, Spend, Repeat on Amazon. ThriftyLittleMom.com is her blog if you want to check out what's going on over there, see how they're paying the bills. And of course, Cressel's new content business is at Makersize.com. I'll link all those up in the show notes for you at SideHustleNation.com/Kim. In the meantime, let's wrap this thing up with your number one tip for Side Hustle Nation. Cressel, you can go first.
Whether our new adventure turns out to be an amazing dream or a terrible nightmare, the beauty in it all is that we have the financial flexibility to try. So my number one tip for Side Hustle Nation is to work at it to arrange yourself financially so that you have that financial flexibility to set yourself up for whatever your dream may look like. And I pretty much stole that quote from Kim's book. So
I'd say it's never too late to pivot. Really take a hard look at your life and ask yourself, are you doing right now what it is that you really want to be doing? And if not, how do you position yourself and your money to back up the dreams that you have for your life? And how do you pursue that sooner than later? Because remember, you only get one shot at this. And so what are you going to do with the days that you have to work with?
Arrange yourself for financial flexibility, and it's never too late to pivot. I love it, guys. Thank you so much, and we'll catch up with you soon.
thanks, Nick.
Thanks, Nick.
This might have been one of my favorite episodes to put together for a lot of reasons, and I'll share those, plus my top takeaways from the call in just a minute. But first, let me tell you about the fine companies that help make this show possible. The first is FreshBooks, the affordable small business accounting solution that's built specifically for entrepreneurs, freelancers, and side hustlers like us. In your business, you probably know the awkward and maybe exhilarating feeling of wearing all the hats, from sales to marketing to accounting to customer support. And where FreshBooks comes in is in trying to make that accounting hat fit a little more comfortably. Like I mentioned at the top of the show, I've been a FreshBooks customer for years, and the reason is they just make my life easier. I can drop a professional looking invoice in under a minute, send it over, and get paid. If you haven't already, check out the freshly redesigned FreshBooks platform. They've gone through feature by feature to make it more intuitive and even easier to use. So in addition to invoicing, they've got time tracking and expense management tools built right in, and the handy FreshBooks mobile app works wherever you do. See how the all-new FreshBooks can save you time dealing with your paperwork so you can spend more time making your hustle happen. Go to freshbooks.com/sidehustle to start your 30-day free trial today. That's freshbooks.com/sidehustle and enter the Side Hustle Show in the How Did You Hear About Us section. This edition of the Side Hustle Show is also brought to you by HelloFresh. HelloFresh is the meal kit delivery service that makes cooking more fun and convenient. In my episode with Noah Kagan, which was episode 237, you might remember me talking about how meal planning and meal prep was a pain point for my wife and I. Well, HelloFresh has stepped up with a solution. Delicious and healthy recipes that are ready in around 30 minutes or less, delivered right to the door with all the ingredients and instructions inside. That means I don't have to be a master chef to make an awesome meal, and I don't have to waste my time going grocery shopping or agonizing over the eternal question of what's for dinner. And the new lower prices, now less than $10 a meal, make me pretty happy too. You can choose how many meals you need each week and for how many people, and if you're craving a little more variety in your life, there are new recipes every week. Are you hungry yet? Well, to sweeten the deal, HelloFresh is offering Side Hustle Show listeners $30 off your first week of deliveries. Visit HelloFresh.com and use the promo code SideHustle30 to claim that deal. That's $30 worth of free food at HelloFresh.com with promo code SideHustle30. Okay, so I mentioned this was one of my favorite episodes to put together, and I think the biggest reason why is I see a lot of parallels between Kim and Cressel and my wife and I. Cressel's an engineer, Bryn's an engineer. They started dating when they were 17. We started dating even before that. Kim's a blogger, I'm a blogger, and we've both been wrestling with a similar set of questions, like, what do we really want to be doing? How do we really want to spend our time? And how can we build our lives around that? It's not easy. Like, they're not easy questions to answer, but hearing another family work through some of the same challenges has been helpful for me and hopefully helpful and inspirational for you as well. So these were my top takeaways from the call. Number one is it's a team sport. This is something that took Bryn and I a while to fully embrace, and that's the togetherness of our financial situation. And we actually still have separate bank accounts, but our mindset is centered on common goals and combined metrics like household net worth, household passive cash flow. One thing that Kim and Cressel did that was really smart was not let their lifestyle creep up to match their income while they were both working. I see this all the time, and Kim mentioned it too, with their friends buying fancy houses and fancy cars. And it's like she said, it's a trade. You're trading flexibility and freedom for having to work to pay for all that stuff. It's a team sport. So that's takeaway number one. It's a team sport. Get your partner, get your spouse on board, have them listen to this if they're on the fence. It's so much easier with two heads working toward the same goal. Takeaway number two is make it a game. Have you ever played the Rich Dad, Poor Dad cash flow board game? The object of the game is one we can probably all relate to. It's to escape the rat race. It's like a Monopoly game, but with like an actual moral of the story, and you're not trying to like bankrupt your neighbors. And how you do that, how you win the game, is to generate cash flow from businesses or investments that exceed your monthly expenses. So there are two parts to it, right? How much you spend and how much you bring in from non-job sources. The less you spend, the easier the game is to win. And Kim and Cressel made it a game twice. First, it was to see how quickly they could annihilate, in their words, the mortgage. And second was to see if Kim's blog could make more than Cressel's engineering salary. So the question is, how can you gamify your side hustle? That's takeaway number two, make it a game. Takeaway number three is, what's your worst case scenario? Stepping away from a career to travel or pursue a business or pursue an early retirement lifestyle is scary. And Kim and Cressel told you their worst case scenario. It's, hey, we'll go get another job. I don't think they would classify themselves as rich in the traditional sense, but they've put themselves in a position not to have to make a commute, to be able to spend time with family, and to be able to work on projects that they care about. When your worst case scenario is somebody else's best case, I think you're pretty rich after all. And maybe you're the person who loves your job. Like, there's nothing else you'd rather do with your 40 hours a week. And that's awesome. It's about building the optionality to bail if and when that scenario changes, or if your company says, look, the feeling's not mutual. Notes and links for this one are at sidehustlenation.com/Kim. Sorry, Cressel, your wife's name is a little bit easier to spell, but that's it for me. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, let's go out there and make something happen. And I'll catch you in the next edition of The Side Hustle Show, where you'll meet a friend of mine who found himself in his mid-30s, 6 figures in debt, making $15 an hour, who hustled his way to financial freedom in just 4 years. Hit the subscribe button in your podcast player app, and it'll be automatically beamed to your device next Thursday morning. You don't want to miss it. I'll see you then. Hustle on.
Thanks for listening to The Side Hustle Show at www.sidehustlenation.com.